Okay, let's go to the first question now. Defamiliarization as a concept was developed in which theory? Marxism, structuralism, Russian formalism, feminism.
Russian formalism.
Russian
Russian
formalism.
formalism.
Russian formalism. Okay, can you please explain on that? What else you know about defamiliarization? What is defamiliarization and who are the proponents? You have said the right answer. It's a part of Russian
Excuse
formalism.
me,
It was
sir. Audible അല്ല.
audible അല്ല? കേൾക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ല?
Yes, audible ആണല്ലോ.
വോളിയം കുറവാണല്ലോ
audible.
സർ.
വോളിയം കുറവാണോ?
നോ സർ.
അത് ചിലപ്പോൾ അവരുടെ ടെക്നിക്കൽ ഇഷ്യൂസ് ആയിരിക്കും. നിങ്ങളുടെ അവിടെയുള്ള പ്രോബ്ലം ആയിരിക്കും ഒരു പക്ഷേ. എനിക്കിവിടെ അത്യാവശ്യം നല്ല കണക്ഷൻ ഉണ്ട്. ചെക്ക് വിത്ത് യുവർ audio, net connection. Okay, let's move on. Defamiliarization. So tell me, what is defamiliarization? Who actually proposed this theory of defamiliarization?
The theory was proposed by Victor Shklovsky.
Okay. Shklovsky. In which work?
His art, his essay.
Art as Technique.
Okay, Art as Technique or Art as Device. Both are the titles of this essay. It was proposed to Viktor Shklovsky. He was a prominent Russian formalist. Okay, fine. So it's not a part of structuralism, Marxism, neither feminism. Actually, structuralism is also, formalism comes under structuralism only, but if you go more specifically, the idea of defamiliarization is a part of a particular school called Russian formalism. So we'll move on to the next question now. What does John Dryden tries to justify? Try to justify in an essay of defense of poetry. Defend English drama over French drama and ancient drama. Claims poetry as the most superior art. French drama is considered as a classical model. Drama is inferior to poetry. What does he do in his major critical work titled An Essay of Dramatic Poetry or Dramatic Poesy?
Drama is inferior to poetry.
Drama is inferior to poetry. Okay, is he talking about drama alone?
Yes, English drama, French drama,
Yes.
Asian drama, like that.
Okay, he's talking about all kinds of drama, but what might be the purpose of his writing?
Defend English drama.
Yeah, that's right. He wrote in defense of English drama or French drama because French drama was already holding a high position. It was very famous. Superior to all other fields of drama. All other literatures. French literature had a prominence, a kind of superiority over all other literatures because the kind of theories that were produced from French literature, produced in French literature, or the kind of works that has been contributed from French literature. So in the history of literature, in the literary history itself, we find always French drama dominating or French literature dominating. So as a nationalist writer who shares the feelings, nationalist feelings, Dryden actually intended to showcase the dominance or maybe the qualities of English drama over the French drama or ancient drama. Ancient drama, we already know drama actually comes from ancient drama or Greece or Roman plays. So he wanted to place English drama. He wanted to find a place for English drama along with the standard of French drama or ancient drama. So that is one of the chief purposes of writing that critical work titled An Essay of Dramatic Poesy. Okay, we'll move on to the next question now. P.B. Shelley wrote a response to a contemporary author in the essay The Defense of Poetry. Mary Shelley, Byron, Thomas Love Peacock, John Keats.
Thomas
Love Peacock.
Yeah,
Thomas Love Peacock.
Thomas Love Peacock. Okay, he wrote The Defense of Poetry as a response to Thomas Love Peacock, and also he has mentioned a number of other issues that were happening at that time. And we also consider Defense of Poetry as one of the statements of Shelley about his about poetry, his statement about poetry in general, and also the English poetry in particular. And he has also made passive references about various techniques in poetry in this work. So it's a very important work, Defense of Poetry. And also he is trying to protect Keats in defense of poetry, because Keats was brutally attacked by the magazines at that time. So he also wrote it in defense of Keats too, justifying Keats' works, Keats' poetic maturity or poetic talents. There was a huge question, I mean, about Keats' poetic quality at that time, because Keats was a very young poet. So he also mentioned, I mean, he also wrote in defense of Keats too, this work. And it was also a romantic, I mean, criticism from the romantic period. Moving to the next question. In how many volumes Biography Literae was published? It's a very simple question. How many volumes was Biography Literae was published?
3.
3, is it right?
2 volumes.
Yeah, it was actually 2 volumes. Biography Literaria. One second. Okay, 2 volumes. It was published, I mean, in 2 volumes. Fine. Wait, where is that? Okay, next question we are moving to. Who coined the term Eccriture Feminine? Helen Sissou,
Kristeva.
Sixo, Julia Kristeva, Gayatri Spivak, Judith Butler.
Helen Sixo.
Helen Sixo.
Julie.
Helen Sixo.
Francis.
Helen Sixo was the one who coined the term Eccriture Feminine, and all others are also. Are they all feminists?
No, Gayatri Spivak is the first colonial critic.
Postmodern.
Colonial.
Post-colonial.
Post-colonial.
Okay, Gayatri Spivak. Okay, fine. She was a post-colonial critic. Judith Butler.
She is a feminist.
Australian women writer.
Australian women writer. What is she famous for?
Canadian.
Butler. What is she famous for actually? Which theory she is famous for?
Dialogue.
Performativity.
Yeah, performative. That's very important actually. And you consider the post-modern feminism after the radical feminism, after the third wave, if you're looking at feminism, her work, gender trouble, or her observations on identity, subjectivity, sexuality, all these identity concepts are actually reconstructed by Butler. So that's why she is very important figure, not only in the field of feminism, but also in the field of queer theory, or LGBTQ studies, or if you look at any kind of parallel literary, I mean, the theories of recent origin, she has a say on all these theories. And she is also a feminist from, she's also an American feminist, not a Canadian or Australian feminist. She's an American feminist. Okay, fine. Kristeva.
Intertextuality.
Cora language.
Yeah. Okay, intertextuality, Cora. Okay, intertextuality is one of the major concepts she has contributed. Intertextuality, Kristeva. We will look into Kristeva later. I have added some more questions from feminism, so we'll see Kristeva there in detail. And Helen Sixo, coming back to our answer. Helen Sixo. Sixo is actually culture feminine. What does it mean?
Women writing.
Yeah, women writing. Women writing. It means in English, women writing. And Helen Sixo was part of the later phase of post-feminism, we can call it, after the third wave feminism that came after the third wave. So she was also a radical feminist. She is also considered, along with Judith Butler and Lucy Irigaray, all these radical feminists. Okay, and this concept was proposed by, in which work do you remember?
Laugh of Medusa.
Yeah, it is Laugh of Medusa. This concept was introduced was discussed in her famous work Laugh of Medusa. Okay, fine. We'll move on to the next question. Identify the features of cultural studies. Here, I have given some of the major features of cultural studies. So, can you identify which are the features of cultural studies, which actually qualifies the features of cultural studies? One aim of cultural studies could be to examine cultural practices and their relation to power following critical theory. Cultural studies aim on to be both an intellectual and a pragmatic enterprise. Cultural studies has a commitment to an ethical evaluation of modern society. An objective of cultural studies is to understand culture in all its complex forms and analyzing the social and political context in which culture manifests itself. It's a bit lengthy statement. All these options are lengthy, but you read it focused and try to pick out the most qualifying statements which actually explains cultural studies. There are multiple of options, I mean right answer options, or sometimes maybe all these options are actually justifying or explaining cultural studies. So look at each option and try to identify. One aim of cultural studies could be to examine cultural practices and their relation to power following critical theory. Cultural studies aim to be both an intellectual and pragmatic enterprise. Intellectual in the sense, sorry, 1 second.
All are correct.
Sure. Are you sure?
Sir, option A, C,
And
A
D.
and D. Okay, fine.
Option D.
Option D. Okay, you were telling almost all options. So let's revisit each option and try to enumerate the meanings that are there. First one, the most explicit explanation is actually the last one. The objective of cultural studies is to understand culture in all its complex forms and analyzing the social and political context in which culture manifests itself. That is the most explicit form to explain. I mean, a most explicit definition to explain cultural studies. So that will definitely suit as an explanation of cultural studies. The objective of cultural studies is actually to understand culture in all its complexities, in all its complex forms, and analyzing the social and political context in which culture manifests itself. So we understand both political and social contexts in which culture actually functions. Culture manifests, culture makes itself visible. So that is one of the definition or one of the explanations for cultural studies. And looking back in a reverse form, we'll see the second option, C, from the last. Cultural studies has a commitment to an ethical evaluation of modern society. So according to the cultural theorists, definitely cultural studies has an ethical evaluation, I mean, has a duty or commitment to make an ethical evaluation of modern society. They are looking at the morality of society also. I mean, they are evaluating culture on the basis of the morality that's being evolved during various political and social movements like capitalism and open free market, liberalization, neoliberalism. So they have that duty to, that commitment to. Okay, so that option is also explaining cultural studies. And back to another one. Cultural studies aims to be both an intellectual and pragmatic enterprise. That is a bit tricky actually, but see, look at the words intellectual and pragmatic enterprises. That's both. Cultural studies is not just only explaining, but it is also theorizing about culture. It's not just an criticism of culture, rather it's also theorizing culture. That's what is meant by these two terms, intellectual and pragmatic enterprise. So it is an enterprise, definitely an enterprise. It's a project kind of thing. It's a theoretical school. And it has both two dimensions. First one is it's an intellectual one. It's an intellectual in the sense it's it's theorizing culture, the changes that happens in culture, and at the same time it's pragmatic. It's actually functioning. I mean, it's actually intervening in various cultural process with their own theorizations. So theorization is actually moving into a kind of a practical implementation in that sense. So that is also right. And the first option, one aim of cultural studies could be examine cultural practices and their relation to power following critical theory. That is also right. That means all options are right. In one way or other, they are all explaining what is cultural studies. So the first option, definitely cultural studies is following literary theory, critical theory, and they are in a broader sense actually trying to explain cultural practices and their relation to power. So all these options are right. So look at each and every option and you will get various dimensions of cultural studies by this option. So it's kind of an explanation or definition to cultural studies at large. 1 second. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Identify the author of White Skin and Black Mask, an important work in post-colonial literature. Edward Said, Frantz Fanon, Gayatri Spivak, Homi Bhabha.
Frantz Fanon.
Frantz Fanon.
Frantz Fanon, okay. White Skin and Black Mask. Gayatri Spivak work, which was her famous work?
Kansas Subaltern Speak.
Okay, fine. Homi Bhabha?
National Narration.
Okay, National Narration. Okay. Edward Said?
Orientalism.
Orientalism. Okay, fine.
Oriental.
Okay, we'll move to the next question now. Who, apart from Antonio Gramsci, explored the notion of hegemony in the works, in the work Marxism and Literature? Marxism and Literature is a work, and in that work, one of the theoreticians I have listed here has extensively talked about the idea of hegemony. So, who might be that critic? Gayatri Spivak, Raymond Williams, Adorno, Theodore Adorno, Michel Foucault.
Raymond Williams.
So you have two options, Raymond Williams and Michel Foucault. Which one might be?
I don't know.
I don't know. Let's look at this each of these options. Gayatri Spivak is actually a proponent of which school of theory?
Post-colonial.
Post-colonial. Raymond Williams?
Marxism.
Yeah, Marxist critic ആണ് Raymond Williams. Adorno and Horkheimer.
Marxism.
They are also Marxist. Okay, they are also belonging to a particular school that we will see later, because if I don't say that, because that is already added as an option here in the coming question. So I don't explain that one. So leave Adorno, and Michel Foucault is a
Post-structuralist.
Okay, post-structuralist. Fine. Then who might be? I mean, let's look at Antonio Gramsci. Gramsci belonged to which school? Sorry? Sorry, I didn't get you. 1 second, hold it. Okay, fine. Okay, Gramsci belongs to which school?
Marxism.
Okay, Marxism. So one of the major Marxist critic in the option is actually Raymond Williams. So Raymond Williams is the one who has spoken on hegemony. Apart from Gramsci was the one who introduced the concept of hegemony, and Raymond Williams actually explored various dimensions of hegemony in a different context. At Gramsci's time, it was different. Hegemony was different, and when it came into another phase of capitalism that is called neoliberalism. So the idea of hegemony itself had undergone a greater transition. So that idea of hegemony, which has been modified and which has been which has got into a different form, was explained by Raymond Williams in detail in his work Marxism and Literature. Okay. Next question. Identify the major theories of cultural studies from the list. Richard Hogarth, The Uses of Literacy. Raymond Williams, The Long Revolution. Francois Lyautey, Postmodern Condition. E.P. Thompson, The Making of the English Working Class. Cultural studies.
Raymond Williams.
Raymond Williams. Cultural studies.
The Long Revolution.
Is he belonging to cultural studies?
Richard Hogarth.
Richard Hogarth. Okay, Richard Hogarth, definitely. Uses of Literacy. He is a part of the cultural studies. And E.P. Thompson?
Also cultural theorist.
Yeah.
E.P. Thompson, The Making of English Working Class.
Yes. Okay. And Raymond Williams, definitely. He's like considered to be a founding father of cultural studies. So Raymond Williams, Long Revolution is a very significant work in the field of cultural studies. So the one who is actually who has been left out is Francois Lyautey, The Postmodern Conditions. He is talking about postmodernism in his book Postmodern Conditions. Okay, so A, B, and E are the right options. Next question, identify the right statements about queer theory. It is a term that rejects the normative definitions of appropriate feminine and masculine behavior. It's a term that came to address the issues of gay and lesbian categories of people. It was conceived as a theory during 1990s and suggested a methodology for literary analysis and productive practice of theory in times of postmodern feminism. It was both critical of and affiliated to feminism in certain ways. It's a term that rejects the normative definitions of appropriate feminine and masculine behavior. It's a term that came to address the issues of gay and lesbian categories of people. It was conceived as a theory during 1990s and suggested a methodology for literary analysis and productive practice of literary theory in the time of postmodern feminism. It was both.
Option A.
Option A. Okay.
All true, sir.
It is. Sorry.
Option B.
All are true.
Actually, all are true. In different senses, I'll explain. It's a term that rejects the normative definitions of appropriate feminine and masculine behavior. That was the purpose of the theory in the beginning. I mean, the idea of cure was actually to explain or reject the normative definitions of appropriate feminine and masculine behavior. Appropriate feminine and masculine means the gender dichotomies. In the beginning, we know that there were only two genders, like male and female. So this dichotomy everything was around this dichotomy. All kind of activism was actually conducted around this dichotomy. Even in the first and second phase of feminism itself, what we find is that they also considered, they are also theorizing things around this particular dichotomy of male and female. So they were actually the norms or normal terms. They were very much into the part of the normal theories and normal philosophy. But Cure actually in 1990s came rejecting all these normative definitions by putting forward something that is new, by embracing something that is new, or by collectively bringing into the focus various deviations from this gender dichotomy, like gay, lesbian, LGBTQ in general term, we call them. So that was one of the intentions of queer theory, and it is a term that came to address the issues of gay and lesbian categories of people. So initially, they were looking at gay and lesbian categories of people. Queer basically looking at gay and lesbian categories, but thereafter it embraced everything. It actually included everything. And it was conceived as a theory during 1990s. That is right. It came to prominence in 1990s and suggested a methodology for literary analysis. So queer theory was something that brought together all these terms, gay, LGBTQ, and finally they are attempting to create a literary analysis, I mean methodology for literary analysis, including all this or based on all these categories, and productive practice of theory in times of postmodern feminism. So during the postmodern feminism, they were trying to bring in some different theoretical propositions based on the oriented on these various categories which were excluded in the previous discourse of feminism. So it was both critical and critical of and affiliated to feminism in certain ways. So it was critical of the traditional feminism because of their resistance to accept gay lesbian categories into their critical realm, and at the same time it was accepting or affiliated to feminism in a sense that it was going or getting along with the post-feminist philosophers like Helen Sissou or Lucia Irigaray and such. Okay, so that sense of queer theory includes all these notions. Queer theory is actually, these are all characteristics of queer theory. We'll move on to the next question. Who is subaltern? There are various options. The colonial subject that has been constructed by European discourse and internalized by colonial people. Subaltern is a British word for someone of inferior military rank, was a term coined by Antonio Gramsci, was a term coined by Gayatri Spivak in Can the Subaltern Speak? There may be multiples of
Option
options.
B.
Subaltern is a British
All
word.
A, B, and D.
E is
All true,
right.
sir. A, B, C, D, true.
All true?
Yes,
All
yes.
can't be true because see, option C
Yes.
and D are almost like
Yes.
contradicting. No,
B and C.
Option B and C.
option B and C are right. Subaltern
Sorry.
is a British word for
Sorry,
someone of
option.
inferior military rank. Okay, tell me.
B, C, D.
D is wrong because
B
D and
and
C
D.
cannot be right.
C is right. A, B, and C is right.
Okay, A, B, and C are
B,
right.
C.
Right answers. The colonial subject that has been constructed by European discourse and internalized by colonial people. Subaltern is actually a colonial subject created by the European discourse and internalized by the colonial people. That is right. Then subaltern is a British word for someone of inferior military rank. Etymologically, that word means someone of inferior military rank, and it was coined by Antonio Gramsci. Okay, the last option is wrong. So the rest of the options are right. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Silent Spring was a major dash work written by dash. Feminist work by Helen Sixo. Queer work
Option
by
C. Ecofeminism by Rachel Carson.
Rachel Carson.
Anthropology by Henry Nesse. Okay, fine. Right. It was Silent Spring was an epoch-making work by the celebrated ecofeminist Rachel Carson in 16 or 61, I think 1960 or 61. I don't remember the exact date of publication. Adrienne Rich, who is Adrienne Rich?
Queer theorist.
No. She's not a queer theorist actually. The options I have given here
Feminist.
are not correct. Okay. Only the correct one is ecofeminism, Rachel Carson. Feminist work, Helen Sissou, that is right. But here in the case of Adrienne Rich is actually a poet who has written the famous work, Diving to the Wreck. Famous work, Driving to the Wreck, is one of her famous poetries. Okay, she is one of the most read poets, American poets. And deep ecology is also a part of eco-criticism. Which is coined by Henry Nesse, and deep ecology actually means that ecology is something that is organic and collective. It is against, it was a movement that came against this one, anthropocentrism. So, okay, 1 second. People are getting connected. Okay. We'll move on to the next question now. Public sphere was a term proposed by Georges Habermas, Antonio Gramsci, Michel Foucault, Jean Baudrillard.
Habermas.
Habermas. Yeah, it was proposed by Habermas. Term public sphere was proposed by Habermas. Okay, fine. Frankfurt School of Criticism is a dash-oriented school with proponents like dash and dash. It's a linguistic-oriented school with the proponents like Roland Barthes and Raymond Williams. A deconstructionist school with the proponents like Jacques Derrida and Paul Deman. Marxist school with the Theodore Adorno and Maxim Horkheimer. A structuralist school by Levi-Strauss and Lucien Goldman.
Option C, Marxist.
Marxist with Theodore Adorno and
Option C,
Horkheimer.
Marxist Theodore Adorno.
Okay, it's a school. I mean, it's a Marxist school. Proponents like Theodore Adorno and Maxim Horkheimer. Culture industry is one of the major work from that school, and Walter Benjamin is another major figure in that Frankfurt School of Criticism. Okay, fine. Okay.
സർ ഒരു
Move on to the
ഡൗട്ട് ഉണ്ട്. അത്
Yes.
ബെന്യാമിൻ എന്നാണോ അതോ ബെഞ്ചമിൻ എന്നാണോ സർ?
വാൾട്ടർ ബെന്യാമിൻ
Hello?
അതൊരു ഫ്രഞ്ച് ടേം ആണല്ലോ. ജെ ആക്ച്വലി ഫ്രഞ്ചിൽ യാ ആയിട്ടാണ് വായിക്കുന്നത്. ഇപ്പം
എ ആണ്.
കാളിയുഗ് എന്നല്ല നമ്മൾ പറയുന്നത്, ജുങ് എന്നല്ലല്ലോ. ജെ ഇസ് യാ ആക്ച്വലി പ്രൊനൗൺസിയേഷൻ when it comes in French. Okay. Match the following. Laura Mulvey, Judith Butler, Michel Foucault, Simone de Beauvoir. Body that matters. History of sexuality, memory of a dutiful daughter, visual pleasure and narrative cinema.
Laura Mulvey, visual pleasure and narrative cinema.
Okay.
Simon de Beauvoir, history of sexuality.
No. Simone de Beauvoir.
Sorry, memory of a
Bodies
dutiful
that
daughter.
matter.
Memory of a dutiful daughter by whom?
Simon de Beauvoir.
Okay, Simone de Beauvoir. Okay.
Judith Butler, Bodies That Matter.
Okay, Judith Butler, Bodies That Matter.
Michel Foucault, History of Sexuality.
History of Sexuality, 5 volumes. Okay, that's right. Laura Mulvey, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. Judith Butler, Bodies That Matter. Michel Foucault, History of Sexuality, and Simone de Beauvoir, Memory of a Dutiful Daughter. Okay, next. A term applied to the experience of a people dispersed from their original homeland for long period.
Sir, slide visible അല്ല sir?
Visible അല്ല?
അല്ല അവിടെ match the following തന്നെ നിൽക്കും.
ഇപ്പോഴോ?
വിസിബിൾ ആയിരുന്നു, ഇപ്പൊ പോയി.
ഇല്ല.
ഇപ്പൊ കാണോ?
വിസിബിൾ ആയിരുന്നു.
No.
ഇപ്പൊ
കാണാൻ പറ്റുന്നുണ്ടോ? ഇപ്പൊ കാണാൻ പറ്റുന്നുണ്ടോ? ഐഡന്റിഫൈ ദ ഫീച്ചേഴ്സ് ഓഫ് കൾച്ചർ സ്റ്റഡീസ് ആണോ കിടക്കുന്നത്?
അതെ സർ.
ഇപ്പം ചേഞ്ച് ആവുന്നുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പൊ ഓക്കെ.
Okay, fine. Okay. A term applied to the experience of people dispersed from their original homeland for long period, yet who retain cultural memories and ties. Diaspora. Okay, sorry. Diaspora കുറിച്ചാണ് കേട്ടോ. ഞാൻ diaspora ആഡ് ചെയ്തിട്ടില്ല. Diaspora is a term applied to the experience of people dispersed from their original homeland for long period, yet who retain cultural memories and ties. Diaspora is a group of people who have been forced from or chosen to leave from homeland to settle in other lands. A and B are wrong. A is right, B is wrong. Both are right. A is wrong, B is right.
Both are right.
Yeah, both are right. Both are right. Yeah. Both these terms are actually defining what is diaspora, a term applied to the experience of people dispersed from their original homeland for long period, yet who retain cultural memories and ties. That's why they are called diasporas, because they are displaced from their place, whether through internal displacement or international, external displacement out of their country, out of the borders. They actually retain their cultural memories and ties. A diaspora is a group of people who have been forced from or chosen to leave their homeland to settle in other lands. So that is the definition of diaspora. Okay, match the following. Add the question. Assimilation and acculturation, hybridity, performativity, culture industry, male gaze, diaspora, Marxist criticism, Laura Mulvey, Homi K. Bhabha, gender trouble.
Hybridity, Homi K. Bhabha.
Hybridity, Homi K. Bhabha.
Okay.
Performativity, gender trouble.
Performativity.
Male gaze, Laura Mulvey.
Male gaze, Laura Mulvey.
Assimilation and acculturation.
Culture industry, Marxist.
Culture industry, Marxist criticism. Assimilation and acculturation.
Diaspora.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, assimilation and acculturation, internalization. Three terms ഉണ്ട് ഇതിനകത്ത് diasporic. I mean, diasporic criticism, diasporic studies in the moon terms ഉണ്ട് assimilation, acculturation, and internalization. Acculturation എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ എന്താണ്? Assimilation എന്താണ് അപ്പം? Assimilation.
Influence of other culture.
Assimilation actually assume ചെയ്യാൻ, അതായത് വേറൊരു കൾച്ചറിനെ ഇംബൈബ് ചെയ്യുന്നതിനെയാണ് അസിമിലേഷൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. പക്ഷെ when it comes to acculturation, acculturationല് രണ്ട് കൾച്ചർ, വേറൊരു കൾച്ചറിൽ നിന്ന് വന്ന ഒരു ഗ്രൂപ്പ് ഓഫ് പീപ്പിൾ, they come and settle in a particular place and they actually keep up their own culture. At the same time, they are trying to get internalized to or get to the new culture where they are settled in. So there is a kind of a balanced approach in which acculturation happens. So there is a kind of a negotiation that happens between these two cultures. One is a foreign culture and one is indigenous culture of their own. And out of this negotiation, there is a kind of a counter culture which is being formed. So this whole process is called acculturation. It's also leading to hybridization, a hybrid culture. In which two cultures are mixed together. Elements from both cultures are assimilated according to their convenience. So these things are actually discussed under this diasporic criticism or diasporic studies. Okay, hybridity, you know what is Homike Bhabha's idea. Performativity, gender trouble, Judith Butler a major term on performativity. She is arguing that gender, sexuality, sex, gender, all these roles, subjectivity, everything is actually a part of a performative process. They're all constructed. They're not innate, they're all constructed. And culture industry is one of the major terms proposed by Frankfurt School of Criticism, Marxist literary criticism, Adorno and Horkheimer. Male gaze is a term that was proposed by Laura Mulvey in the Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. In which she's attacking it, how the consumer culture is actually exploiting the view of male over the body of female, how it is conceived. How visually it is conceived. The female body is visually conceived and projected and sold, being commodified. So she is extensively talking about that aspect of perspective, which is also contributing to media studies too. Okay, let's move to the next question. What does hamartia mean? A downfall in the plot of the character. The personal error in the protagonist's personality. It's a literary device. It's a figure of speech.
Personal error in protagonist's personality.
Yeah, it's basically a personal error in protagonist's personality. Okay, it's a personal error. It's a flaw. It's a tragic flaw, actually. It's a flaw in the character of the protagonist. Okay, Stephen Greenblatt was associated with which school of poetry theory? Reader response. New historicism.
New historicism.
That's a very simple question, actually. He's one of the major champions of new historicism, Stephen Greenblatt. Okay, fine. Now there are three questions which are actually in which I have given features of a particular movements. These are actually taken from previous Q&A sessions, so you can also refresh your memory by going through this. Identify the movements from the options. This movement represents life as it really is. Prefer the commonplace and everyday, represented in minute detail. Honor de Balzac and George Eliot. Which movement it actually refers to?
Naturalism.
Realism. It actually
Realism.
refers to realism. Yeah, realism. Represent life as it really is. Prefer the commonplace and everyday, represented in the minute details. We find in realist novels in detail the social realities, especially the French novel, Russian novels. So Honor de Balzac and George Eliot, Victorian novelist George Eliot. A human being exists entirely in order of nature and does not have a soul nor any access to religious or spiritual world beyond the natural world, and therefore that such being is merely a higher order animal whose character and behavior are entirely determined by two kinds of forces, heredity and environment. It's a statement by one of the major critics of 19th century. Can you identify this movement?
Naturalism.
Naturalism. Exactly, no. It has elements of naturalism, but at the same time, it is associated with a famous. It's a famous American movement.
Transcendentalism.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Transcendentalism.
Yes. They are actually the tenets of transcendentalism. Who were the proponents of transcendentalism? Major figures.
Emerson.
Emerson and Thoreau.
Okay, who was that poet who associated with transcendentalism? The famous poet.
Walt Whitman.
Yeah, Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman was the famous poet who associated with the who associated with the transcendentalism, American transcendentalism. Fine. Okay, importance of originality and love for intense emotion, sublime beauty of nature, idealization of rural life, spontaneity, intuitions, feelings, imagination.
Romanticism.
Okay, which one? Romanticism, definitely. Yeah, romantics give importance to originality and love for intense emotions, sublime beauty of nature, idealization of rural life, spontaneity, intuitions, feelings, imagination, and wonder. Okay. Next one, follow nature. Poetry should be deal with the universal truth and general ideas to instruct and delight. Artists to instruct and delight.
Naturalism.
Yeah, definitely. It's neoclassicism. Neoclassicism. Follow nature. It's a Pop's idea only, actually. Pop is telling about, Pop is actually talking about following, idea of following nature, the universal human nature, all these ideas, decorum and all. That is, they are actually associated with the neoclassicism. Okay, with that, it ends. One more thing is there. 1 second. Okay, you have any doubts?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Then I will upload the video. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Yes.
Good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.